This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire's sister company, ArtistWorks. Learn from masters with ArtistWorks. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5 Watt World, where we're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. Which guitarist that used a Les Paul had the biggest impact on the music world, and by extension, on our world as musicians? There are guitarists and guitars that left the world a different place, that changed what we thought music could do, or how it could sound, or how it could make us feel. I've always been interested in the history of these iconic players and instruments because of the impact that they've had. I'm always trying to find the before and after moments, the moments after which the music and the culture were never quite the same again. Without knowing it, I've been flirting with this list of who I think the most important players and instruments are in each category. And when I thought about making one of these videos, it was clear to me that I needed to start with the Gibson Les Paul Standard and Customs. It would be easy to do a top 20 or maybe even a top 50 list of important Les Paul players, but I wanted to wrestle with who I think are the most important, the ones that changed the world. So I set a limit of 10, plus honorable mentions. Remember that these aren't necessarily my favorite players, though my favorites are in here, but are the ones that I think had the biggest impact playing a Les Paul. You may well disagree. I wouldn't be surprised in the least, and I'm sort of counting on it. But let's start this conversation, so I'll go first. If you enjoy our videos, make sure to subscribe, grab a t-shirt, hoodie, or a Stomp preset pack to support what we do. And to become a bigger part of 5 Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. The links are in the description. These really could be in any order, but let's count them down to keep track of where we are. Number 10. Clearly this list has to start with Les Paul himself. There was much debate about whether Les cooked up the guitar design or whether he worked directly with Gibson to finish a design that would carry his name to this day. Lester William Pulfus, who would later take the stage name Les Paul, was a massive star in the late 40s and 50s. He had numerous hit records and even had a popular television program broadcast from his home with his wife Mary Ford from 52 to 54. Perfect timing for the promotion of the guitar that bore his name that was released in 1952. By the time their marriage ended at the end of the decade, rock and roll had eclipsed their popular harmonized guitars and vocals. Their fame lasted throughout the first decade of the Les Paul Standard and Custom, and it put the new guitar design in front of thousands of professionals and wannabe guitarists alike. Number 9. Many of the later heroes on this list were heavily influenced by Freddie King's 1961 instrumental album, Let's Hide Away and Dance Away. King was pictured on the album holding a 1954 gold top, but it can be seen more clearly on the cover of Freddie King, Blues Guitar Hero. Eric Clapton said he went looking to buy his Les Paul because of King's stinging tone, clear and articulate with plenty of bite. Whether you know it or not, much of the blues vocabulary we play today can be traced back to Freddie King. Number 8. This one's a bit of a cheat, but in the best possible spirit. I have to list the Irish hard rock band Thin Lizzy. Like the Allman Brothers, they set the bar for harmony guitar parts for all that came after. Sneaking them in here also lets me mention 4 Les Paul players of note that were in the band at one point or another. John Sykes, Gary Moore, Scott Gorham, and Brian Robertson. That incarnation with Robertson and Gorham released 5 studio albums and 1 live album, all of which reached the top 10 UK charts before Robertson left and Moore rejoined the band. Thin Lizzy was a big part of my musical teen years. 1976's release Jailbreak being the soundtrack for me driving beat-up cars too fast through the small town where I grew up. The Boys Are Back in Town playing on repeat. I understand from colleagues in the UK that Thin Lizzy's influence there may have been even greater during their pivotal 1970s when hard rock ruled and almighty Les Pauls walked to the earth unchallenged. Number 7. Journey's Neil Schon was a devout user of Les Pauls in the main years of that worldwide hit-making machine. As such, he likely put the sound of a Les Paul on more radios than perhaps any other player of the guitar. It is a gross understatement to say that Schon used many different Les Pauls. In July of 2021, Heritage Auctions sold 112 of his more than 800 instrument collection because his 15,000 square foot storage facility was out of room. Included in that sale were a number of late 50s Les Pauls, along with guitars he'd used on the road. One of the guitars sold then was a black 77 Les Paul Pro that had enjoyed many different pickup combinations over the years with a variety of tremolo bridges, and can be seen in clips of the live show in '81 with a P90 in the neck. Schoen's highly melodic and singable soloing style, along with his more complex harmony in his songwriting, helped propel the band to the top of the rock charts. Number 6. Slash. Picture this. It's 1987, and Gibson is by most any opinion on the ropes. Unable to come along with the super strat and hair metal days of the mid-'80s, the company was looking back to their days of the glory in the '50s and not yet doing it very well. Along comes a curly-headed, top hat wearing, nose ring sporting rocker succinctly named Slash. Guns N' Roses injected a harder edge into the music, and there was Slash, his Les Paul slung low like the stage warriors from decades before, wielding the original weapon of choice, the Les Paul. Many have argued, including me, that his use of a Les Paul quite literally saved the company. The irony is that the guitar he used to record the majority of Appetite for Destruction was actually a copy of a '59 Les Paul that had been built by West Coast luthier Chris Derrig. And while we're at it, Nashville session guitarist Justin Ostrander reminded me that if you close your eyes and take away all the glitz of the show, you'll remember that Slash is a very talented soloist with a wonderful sense of melody. He certainly sent an entire generation reaching for Les Pauls. My buddy David Barber of Barber Electronics said he remembers watching guitar stores loaded with superstrats slowly giving up more and more floor space to Les Pauls in the wake of GNR's success. I discovered Artist Works about 10 years ago taking Guthrie Trapp's electric country guitar course. It completely changed the way I approach the guitar, in every genre. Artist Works has affordable courses in a wide variety of instruments and styles, all taught by master musicians ready to work with you using their innovative video exchange program. Get 40% off any Artist Works school using the link in the description along with the code FWW40. Taking courses with Artist Works opened up the way I play, and it can do the same for you. I'd like to thank Artist Works for their support in making this video. Number 5. Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads' 1974 white Les Paul Custom was bought for him by his bandmates when he was in the band Quiet Riot. As a Norland-era Les Paul Custom from the early '70s, it had the mahogany and maple sandwich body of the time and a carved maple top. Whiteman knew by the time Randy was playing the guitar, the finish had yellowed to the color of Irish butter. Randy made a few small cosmetic changes to the guitar, substituting shalers for the Grover tuners and swapping out the toggle switch plate. Finally, he had his name engraved on the pickguard. The pickups at the time would have been the custom T-buckers, so named for the T-shaped tool markers made in the forward bobbin. The story goes that when he auditioned for Ozzy Osbourne, Ozzy gave him the gig without hearing a single note as he watched Randy pull the white Custom out of its case. Rhoads brought a level of guitar knowledge to the hard rock world that was rarely there before. He famously took a guitar lesson with local teachers in each city the band visited on tour. His background playing classical guitar can be seen in his thumb behind the neck left-hand position. Interestingly, on the intro for Diary for a Madman, Rhoads plays the chords used in classical guitar composer Leo Brouwer's Etude No. 6. I learned the piece in college and have played bits of it in videos, after which I'm generally accused of copying it from Rhoads, but Rhoads had copped the changes from Brouwer. Great stuff from a hard rock legend. Number 4. Duane Allman. I've lost track of the number of players that cite the Allman Brothers album Live at the Fillmore East as a primary influence. Known for playing Les Pauls, Duane actually used 3 different guitars throughout his career. He bought his first, a '57 Gold Top, early in 1969, and it was the guitar on which he learned and honed his slide style. He played the '57 on the first 2 Allman Brothers records, and it's the one used on Eric Clapton's Derek and the Dominos, Layla and Other Love Song sessions. In September of 1970, Duane traded the Gold Top for a '59 Cherry Burst after first swapping out the pickups between the 2 guitars. It is that guitar that is heard on Live at the Fillmore East. But in June of '71, guitar dealer Kurt Linhoff sold Duane a '59 with a much darker burst top that would be Duane's primary instrument until his death in October of '71. The guitars were brought together for the final run of the Allman Brothers Band in 2014, and both Derek Trucks and Warren Haynes commented on how distinctive the tones were. Haynes said of the Cherry Burst 59, "You plug it in and the sound of Duane is unmistakable." Number 3. Billy Gibbons. Billy Gibbons' Pearly Gates was acquired in 1968, just as ZZ Top was getting started. As such, the guitar was the sound of the band from their ZZ Top's first album to the present day. Like so many others, Billy was launched on his search for a humbucking pickup Les Paul by the sounds he'd heard on the July 11, 1965 release of John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, featuring Eric Clapton, affectionately known among fans as the Beano album. The story of Pearly is well known. An aspiring actress and friend of the band needed to go to Los Angeles to audition for a part. They loaned her a 1939 Packard so she could get there. The car was on its last legs, but it got her to Hollywood and she got the part. Given the age of the car and the girl getting the part, they figured there must have been divine intervention, so they named the car Pearly Gates. When she asked if she should send back the car or sell it and send the money, the guys resoundingly said, "Sell it." Billy had heard through a friend that an old rancher that lived outside of Houston had an old guitar under his bed. Gibbons took the $250 he'd just received from the actress and drove out to the ranch, and in Billy's words, the deal went down, and the name of the car was then transferred to the guitar. The tone of Pearly Gates is so etched into Gibbons' musical consciousness that all other guitars he uses on stage are EQ'd to match the EQ curve of an open G chord played on Pearly.
The secret to the rig is every guitar has a tone it's supposed to reach, because when we change guitars, they have to be homogeneous. So if we go to a Telecaster to a Les Paul, the gain all has to be the same. We don't want you to tell that he's ever playing a Telecaster. We took a picture, played a G chord with Pearly. We still bring Pearly out, all the rehearsals. We take a G chord through this setting, gives us this curve. So that's what Pearly is. So that's the benchmark. So all we do, every time I get a new guitar, I play through this setting, a G chord, and see how off it is, because it always is, and we correct it with this. And get it as, it's not perfect science, but it's guitar player science, so it sort of works.
Essentially, they make any guitar he's playing sound as much like Pearly as is technologically possible today. The first 3 ZZ Top records are a catalog of classic blues licks filtered through a thick Texas dust storm and have influenced all Les Paul players that have come after. Number 2. Some might argue that Eric Clapton belongs at the top of this list, but I'll justify his placement here based on the relatively short time he used a Les Paul. Regardless of that reasoning, Clapton's use of a 1960 burst into a Marshall combo on the Beano album was the sort of before and after moment that make up this history. After the release of that record, the blues, R&B, and rock world would never be the same. It introduced the interaction of a Les Paul with an overdriven Marshall cranked up and breathing fire. Though there are different versions of the story, most agree that Clapton bought the guitar at Lou Davis's guitar shop in Charing Cross Road. The debate on whether the guitar was a 59 or a 60 leans towards 60 based on Clapton's claim that it had a very slim neck, which would not have been typical on a 59 burst. And in one of the biggest mysteries of guitar history, after Clapton left the Blues Breakers and started rehearsing with Cream, the guitar was stolen from the rehearsal space. The guitar has never surfaced again, but in an interview in Guitarist magazine in 2016, Joe Bonamassa said that he knows where the Beano guitar is, residing in a collection on the east coast of the U.S. He hasn't seen the guitar himself, but he knows people that have, that identified it by the unique fingerprint shape mark in the finish by the volume and tone pots. Okay, now for some honorable mentions. Peter Frampton's 3-pickup custom will no doubt have its own video in the future, but sadly, Frampton's more sophisticated harmonies using sixths and ninths didn't make its way into the mainstream influences that the others did here. I'm sure some will disagree in the comments. Ace Frehley from Kiss, of course, was a big part of my early rock memory, and he brought great blues riffs to the stage with first modified Les Paul Deluxes and later his Les Paul Customs. In the studio, he was an early advocate of vintage Les Pauls using a 59 burst. Adam Jones' down-tuned and Les Paul-driven guitar work with Tool in the 90s made it clear that Les Pauls weren't just blues machines. His recent run of custom shop signature guitars with Gibson sold out in record time and went on to become a production model. Who'd have thought we'd see the custom shop making copies of a Les Paul from the late 70s? Peter Green was likely as influential a wielder of a burst Les Paul in the UK as Clapton was. Many players in the US as well list him as a primary influence, including Billy Gibbons. And B.B. King said that Green was the only player that gave him, quote, the cold sweats, end quote, and that's from a master indeed. And finally, there's no question that Joe Bonamassa's switch from a Strat to a Les Paul early in his career as his primary instrument has rekindled both my generation and younger players interested in blues and blues rock on a Les Paul. Playing vintage bursts on stage, he shines a light on both the classic gear and the styles of classic players of Les Pauls in every show. And then in every interview, he's always talking about the history of the players that came before him. Number 1, James Patrick Page. Acquired his famous number 1 59 Les Paul in 1969. Joe Walsh was in the UK touring with the James Gang and offered the guitar to Page. At first, Page said that he already had a Les Paul, as he owned a 1960 3-pickup Les Paul Custom, a guitar he'd used in his studio work for many years. But after he played the burst, he relented and bought the guitar that would become his number 1. It's important to remember that this took place between the recording of Led Zeppelin's first and second albums. The vast majority of the Led Zeppelin 1 was recorded with a Telecaster that Page had gotten from Jeff Beck when they were both still in the Yardbirds. But Page would go on to use the burst to perform that music on tour and for many years after. The guitar slung low, he taught the world what a rock guitar player should look and sound like. To call his playing loose or his tuning rough misses the whole point of his incredible timing and interplay with the rest of the band that made all his work so amazing. The tunes he wrote with Led Zeppelin will always be a part of any guitarist's must-learn list. Classic tunes that have and will continue to stand the test of time. Page is the iconic Les Paul player. That's my list. I encourage you to share your own top 10 Les Paul players in the comment section. Remember my criteria, which was that players and the instruments had to have the greatest impact on the music. But again, share your own approach and your list. I know from experience that I can count on you. If you like this video, you'll probably enjoy my short history of the burst Les Pauls as well. First, I need to thank Jeff McErlane and John Cordy for letting me borrow playing examples from their excellent videos. Jeff's love of classic Les Paul players like Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page is well known. John Cordy's relationship with Les Pauls is, how should I say, more complicated. I need to thank Rick Beato, Fluff, Justin Ostrander, and Jeff McErlane for their input on who they felt should be a part of the shortlist of the most influential Les Paul players. Part of the fun of me making this video was going back and watching their videos on Les Pauls, and you should do that too. Whenever I'm writing about Les Pauls, my copy of Dave Hunter's excellent The Gibson Les Paul, The Illustrated History of the Guitar That Changed Rock is always close at hand. I want to thank everyone that stopped by the store and picked up a t-shirt, hoodie, mug, hat, or the Stomp preset pack. And in particular, I need to thank the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. It's the guitar community I've always wanted. You're all 5 Watt World. I just make the videos. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that too. YouTube tells me that 65% of the folks that are watching my videos aren't subscribed. It would really mean a lot to me if you took a minute to subscribe. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for hanging out with me till the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt World.